Hello there and welcome to the Astranti Top 10 Most Likely Unseen Issues for the August 2019 Operational Case Study Exam, where of course we are looking at AKL Sparkle. So this video is going to be a rundown of the 10 issues that I think are most likely going to come up in your exam in August based on my reading of the pre-scene and my extensive knowledge of the operational case study. So let me tell you a bit about the basis of my choice and why I've picked these 10 issues above any other issues, because there's lots of things that could come up. There's 5 variants and there's 8 subsections within each variant. So 5 times 8 is 40. So there's 40 different possible things. So I'm just picking the top 10. So the basis of my choice. First consideration is the focus in the pre-scene. Is it a prevalent issue? Is there a lot of space devoted to it? Is there a degree of importance therefore attached to it by the examiner? So I've looked through the pre-scene. I've recorded a video series of 6 videos looking at the pre-scene in depth. Those issues that came up again and again and again, and those that seemed to deliberately have been put in there by the examiner because they're intending to examine you on it in August. Those issues are the ones I've chosen. Another one is strategic importance. So is it important for the company strategically? How does it relate to SWOT? In the strategic analysis video, I've done a SWOT analysis of the company, and that's helped us to come up with an overall strategy for the company. So bearing that in mind, what kind of things are the company likely to face based on that analysis? And in this case, the importance is likely to be attached by the directors. So what are the directors, the owners, the directors and shareholders potentially likely to be interested in doing over the next 12 months or 5 years or whatever it may be? We're also going on my experience. So my experience of past exams and the typical issues that come up in past exams. If you review past exams, examiners' reports like I have for the past, 4 years or so, you get a good idea of what things come up in the exam, and you get an idea of what kind of things are put in the pre-scene that are deliberately put in the pre-scene so that they can be examined. I actually was involved in writing a pre-scene for an exam a few years back. It was an actual real exam for CIMA. So I've actually got some experience in doing that myself. So when you're doing that, you're thinking about putting in issues that are easy to write exam topics on. Okay, so what's the point of you watching this video? How's it going to help you in the preparation for your exam? Well, for one thing, it's going to help you to prepare key models from the pre-scene information. So some of these issues that I'm going to talk about, you'll be in a position where you can apply a model to the pre-scene, and that's going to give you at least a starting point going into the exam. For example, it could be pestle or a value chain or something like that. And you can do that now, and you have an idea going into the exam of that particular model and how it applies. The thing to remember there is that you should adapt the model for new points in the unseen. So if you go into the exam and suddenly you find out the company has quite a sophisticated marketing strategy or an IT system or something like that, whereas at the moment from the pre-scene we don't know, then you should adapt the model to fit that new information. Another way to prepare is to practice mock exams. So at Astranti, we produce a set of 3 mock exams for the OCS exam, and they are deliberately written to cover these top 10 issues. You can find relevant real life examples to put in your exam. So the examiner is quite keen on seeing you have a wider industry understanding. So you can go as far as preparing sample paragraphs, and you could even learn them if you want to, so you can put them in. So for a particular issue, let's say it's supply chain management, you could do some research and find out what the supply chain is actually like in this industry. And you can look at what an actual company has done, and you could even write a paragraph that shows you understand that wider industry, or shows that you have that wider industry knowledge, and the examiner will be very, very impressed if you manage to do that. You can learn typical key points So for example, if it's a question on the potential adoption of activity-based costing, then you can learn the typical advantages to a company of utilizing activity-based costing, or the disadvantages, or the comparison between ABC and perhaps standard absorption costing. You can do that all ahead of time as well. So if you think an ABC question is coming up, you can revise that, learn the advantages and disadvantages of ABC. So when it actually comes to the exam, you're really just reciting information that you already know. It also helps you to be prepared for what models you can use for the issue. So if a particular issue comes up, something like competitor analysis or whatever it might be, then I'll tell you what kind of models or what kind of theory are going to best support your answer. So what you should use for a particular kind of issue. Okay, so starting at number 10, and these are in no particular order. I don't think issue 1 is any more likely to come up than issue number 10. They just happen to be in this particular order. Issue number 10 then is the manufacturing process. Okay, now granted, this is quite a broad topic, but there are a few specific things about the manufacturing process that worry me, that make me think the examiner is planning to do a question or a couple of questions around changes in the manufacturing process. So for one thing, this is certainly the most important thing. There are major issues with the enameling department. It seems to be the most problematic part of the production process. This is where most issues and faults seem to be occurring. We've got issues with staffing it. We've got issues with the quality of the enamel. So I think that's almost definitely going to come up somewhere in the exams. Other than enamel, we have some outdated equipment. We've got a pretty old kiln being used. That does relate to enamel, but it also relates to PPE, and it could be an issue of its own. There's some dangerous elements in the production process too. We have staff working with molten metals, molten silver, working with their hands close to that. It can be a dangerous environment from that perspective. There could be fumes given off from that. So there's lots of elements in the manufacturing process that could come up in the exam. Okay, so the kind of issues that would come up, or the way that the examiner would take that and put it in the exam, would be something like high wastage caused by issues with enamel. Maybe the kiln isn't working, or maybe a new apprentice hasn't fully learned how to do their job properly, and you have to waste an entire batch of enamel beads, and they can't be recycled because the enamel's been put on them, and we've got to reduce the inventory, the cost of inventory, or something like that. We could have issues with the kiln. Maybe it's not working at capacity, and there's implications for that on the budget. Maybe we're not going to hit budgeted figures, or maybe we need to invest in a new kiln, and we need to look at how we're going to fund the purchase of new non-current assets, whether it's in the budget, whether we need to buy one or lease one or whatever. Could be something to do with bottlenecks. So there is that issue with we only have like one conveyor belt really, and we have to set up a machine and do all this setting up for each new kind of bead. And we're talking about 120 new designs each year. So we could have a real bottleneck there where a whole production process is brought to a halt because we have to stop everything and set up a machine in order to do a new kind of bead. A couple more production lines could really reduce that. There's also mention of recycling the silver that doesn't make it to the final cut. So wasted silver can be melted down and reused again. That could feed into a question in some way. That certainly was something that was noted in the pre-scene a few times, wasn't it? Okay, so key points you must raise. I've already mentioned most of these in the previous section. I just can't help myself or get too excited. But key points to raise would be the programming time of the new beads. That's what I was talking about. When you have to do a new kind of bead, you've got all these setup costs and the time to set up, and that could cause a bottleneck. The amount of hand or manual labor involved, that's potentially time consuming. It could be expensive to have that kind of skill on board. It's potentially dangerous as well. You're exposing people to dangerous materials, and that could have short-term impact if you have an accident. It can have long-term health benefits as well. Not benefits, concerns or issues for the member of staff. Quality control. As we were going through in the pre-scene videos, we were looking for quality control aspects in the production process. There are quite a few, but it all seems to fall apart at enameling. So there might be a quality management, total quality management type of thing related to enamel or the manufacturing process as a whole. And of course, we have our issues with enameling department. There are issues with the quality of the raw materials, as well as the quality of the enameling, potentially the quality of the staff. We have our apprenticeship scheme because there's quite high turnover here, but we don't seem to really be getting to the bottom of the problem, so we may need further action to try and solve that. We could have issues with the supplier as well, potentially the quality of enamel that's giving us isn't good enough. Maybe it's to do with coloured enamel relating to those new trends that we saw at the end of the pre-scene. Maybe we need to get a different supplier, and we're looking at how that impacts costings related to the enameled beads or something like that. Okay, so here's the relevant theory for this. TQM, total quality management, key part of P1. That would certainly be relevant when you're looking at making changes or looking at quality in the production process, maybe even particularly enamel. Throughput accounting, this relates to bottlenecks. Theory of constraints, looking for bottlenecks, looking at how we can improve and make the overall process quicker. That would certainly be relevant. You may want to talk about the value chain if that's the right kind of question. This wouldn't be applicable in all cases, but maybe if you were looking at where we're adding value through operations, or if maybe different aspects that affect the manufacturing process, you could use value chain there potentially. Business process re-engineering, that has come up in exams in the past. They do like to examine that occasionally, and this is one way where they could potentially do that. So just before we finish, I'd like to take you through some of the products we offer in the entire case study course. So this is just one element of the whole course, and I'll just go through the other things that we offer here. So to start with, we have a study text that is devoted to the operational case study, and that's split into two parts. The first part is a guide to how to pass the case study exam. It's full of exam tips, exam strategy, time management, preparation and planning, how to write to the marking criteria, all those kinds of things. And then part two of that study text is a condensed version of all the relevant material of the kind of things that come up in the exam over and over. So essentially it's the most popular topics that have come up in past exams from E1, P1 and F1. And so those are the two study texts available for the operational case study course. And we also do course videos that are roughly based around that first study text. So the exam advice and the timing, the planning, all the things that go in to preparing an exam strategy. We have an entire series of videos that go through that in detail. So if you're more of a visual learner rather than a reader, you can check those out, and they'll be a great help in getting you past the exams. The pre-scene analysis is the series of 6 videos where we look through the actual pre-scene in minute detail, going through every paragraph, making notes and looking how we can use this information to better prepare for the exam when the exam comes up. Separate from that is an industry analysis, and that is a document and a video as well. So the two are in tandem, and the document is about 100 pages looking at the industry in which the company exists. So for example, if the case company is in the car and they're a car manufacturer, then the industry analysis would be an analysis of the car industry. And that's like I say, that's a large document where we break it down, and we're essentially, the point of that is we're doing the research for you to save you time and energy. And the really great thing about the industry analysis is that we include 25 industry examples at the end. So things that happened in the real industry. So the example I just used, it being the car industry. If we were doing the car industry, we'd take 25 examples from the car industry of relevant news and things that have happened to companies and to the industry and consumers or whatever it is. As when we get from those 25 examples, we write a little exam paragraph, the kind of thing that you can literally rehearse and put it in your exam if it's relevant. Examiners do like to see that you have a wider industry knowledge, and so putting in a little example like that can get you good marks. We do mock exams. For the operational case study, we write 3 mock exams, and we have a free mini mock that you can do that are based on the actual CIMA style case study. So they're computer based, they're online, and they're timed, and it's as close to the real thing as we can possibly make it. and that's a really good way to prepare you for the exam. Each time we write our questions based on the pre-scene that's just been released. And with those mock exams, you can get marking and feedback, and that's really essential for you to, if you do your mock exams, I would recommend also getting marking and feedback, because you can then see where you went wrong or what you did well. And the feedback allows you to improve on that. Really important part that a lot of students skip over, and they really struggle in the exam because they weren't prepared, they hadn't done the mock exams. We have masterclasses that run over a course of 2 separate weekends, running up to the exam, and they're essentially a live online class webinar where our tutor will go through with you the kind of a revision one, where we'd start recapping on the most important topics from the E1, P1 and F1 syllabus, and one will be sort of more exam focused. And then finally, we offer pass guarantee, which means that if you meet all the requirements, so you use all these different products that are available, and you fill in a checklist to say that you've done those, but you still don't pass your exam, you're unfortunate or whatever, then we will allow you to resit our course, to take our course again at no extra charge. That's really great for people who are perhaps taking it for the first time and they don't quite pass, but they need to take the course again. If you've gone through that scheme and you've done everything that we ask you to do, then we'll give you the course again for free.